Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here and welcome back to the railway. Today I'm looking at a new wagon by Hornby. This may seem like just another Hornby rolling stock review, but it is not. I mean, it is, but it's also quite a bit more than that because today's prototype is an absolute Hornby classic. Hornby have been making models of these for over 50 years at this point, and I dread to think how many of these Hornby have made, but it's going to be in the hundreds of thousands, if not then more. So this model was first released in 1973, over 50 years ago, and Hornby have still been selling these up until recently in the railroad range. Today though, it's a big day because for the first time in over 50 years, Hornby have retooled this model. They've redesigned it from the ground up, which will presumably mean the old model is now obsolete, which is quite sad, but also obviously a good thing because we've got a nice new model. So today I am looking at this, Hornby's all new TTA wagon. And to anyone who had a train set in the 1970s and onwards, there's a good chance you will recognise this because, like I say, Hornby made so many of them. And I'm really looking forward to this model because obviously it wasn't that long ago since I reviewed the TT version of this, which was absolutely superb. And if you're interested in that video, I'll pop a link up there. So I'm hoping that this will be just as good. In terms of the price, the full RRP for this is £34.99, so a little bit pricey. And at the retailers this costs £27.99, so it's approximately £10 more expensive, at least on the RRP, than the TT version of the model. So hopefully this will meet the high expectations that price calls for, and if it's like the TT one, then I expect it will. But if you're interested in this, check out my affiliate links in the description. Let's get started for now and see what this is like. Alright, the brand new TTA tanker, and like I say, this is a bit more expensive than the TT1 was, and it's a larger model too, so hopefully that means that this will have even more detail than that did, and because of how good the TT1 was, that should make this very impressive indeed, if so. But anyway, let me show you the end of the box. So the version I've gone for is R60209, the BP TTA 35-ton tank wagon, and it is BPO 67765 in this lovely BP green, which for me was always the classic TTA tank, or at least of the Hornby ones. So with that, there's nothing else to see on the box, so let's open this up and let's see what this thing is like. It seems like a long time since Hornby announced this, so it's pretty awesome that this is now here. And there is an accessories bag. We've got a couple of pipes here which have been fully painted, that's great to see. And there's also a little painted lamp in there as well, which seems to have some sort of socket on the back, so that presumably this can be fitted onto a lamp bracket. Nice little feature there, and I don't believe the TT1 came with that. You'll have to go back and check that video to be sure, but yeah, I think that is exclusive then, I suppose, to the 00 scale version. Alright, and the model itself, the TT1 was fantastically painted with a gorgeous finish. Let's see if this one is the same. Let's open it up. Peel back the plastic, take our first look. Ah, it's wrapped up. Alright, well I've lifted it up now. Okay, so here it is. Wow, yeah, the finish on this is really, really good. I love the green. It's got a nice satin sheen to it without being too glossy. And oh, blimey, look at that. The underframe is just insane here. Yeah, I would say this is even more insane than on the TT version. A number of separately fitted parts, and the complexity here is just unbelievable. And it's odd because from the side like this, it looks like quite an unassuming wagon with some nice pleasant details and such, but it's just average. And then you turn it upside down and wham, look at all of that detail. So yeah, I mean, from first glance, this looks amazing, but of course I will take a much closer look at this in just a second. So I'll do that, but first of all, let's have a bit of background on the TTAs. The TTA tank wagons were introduced in the 1960s, but they were built by several different companies. As such, there was a lot of variation across these wagons, although they were all built to the same basic standards. They were used to transport petrochemical products across the country, although some were repurposed over the years to carry other substances and chemicals. They were built in the thousands, and while most of them were withdrawn in the early 2000s, some of them do remain in preservation today. So there it is, up close and personal for you, Hornby's all-new TTA tanker in 00 scale. And yeah, this model is amazing. It really is so impressive. This is Hornby at their best, and it's incredibly reassuring to see that Hornby can still do this. Yeah, they've pulled out all of the stops. This is not a budget model sold at a premium price. This genuinely is top stuff. And let me show you a comparison between this and the old railroad version, which was tooled up in the 1970s. I mean, there is no comparison whatsoever. The difference is night and day. Everything about this new model is a massive upgrade, and that's exactly as it should be. So let's start talking about this. First of all, it is heavier than the old model, not by a huge amount because the railroad version had a heavy metal bar sitting on top of the chassis, which really made it heavier. But yeah, this is heavier still at 50 grams, which is pretty impressive, I think, for a piece of rolling stock. Just the right kind of weight, not ridiculously heavy, but not feather light either. The decoration, like I say, is also amazing. We've got a brilliant finish on the tank itself, and lots of printing on here, and the printing on the railroad versions always looked good in recent years, because obviously they were decorated to modern standards. But here we even have print work on the underframe, which I believe is new to this model. This was certainly not a feature of my older or railroad versions of this, which is great to see. We've got the running numbers on the ends of the tanks. We've got the axle boxes picked out. The buffer holders are all separately painted, which looks fantastic. We've got the ladder, which actually has 3 different colours across it. We've got the green section at the top, yellow in the middle, and then white down below the chassis, which looks great. The ladder, of course, is made of metal. Nice etched piece there. And even the top end of the brake handle here has been picked out in the white, and look how fine that part is. And in fact, look at all the tiny little notches which have been moulded into this part. Yeah, very, very fine indeed. In terms of detail, well, let's start at the bottom with the underframe, which is just crazy. The pipework, the brake rigging, the bottom of the tank, everything is modelled here, and because it's in 00, you can really appreciate this more than you could on the TT version. Again, the difference between this and the railroad version is night and day, because there was literally nothing on the railroad underframe. It was just totally left blank. This is a massive improvement. The buffer beams are also very well detailed. We've got the coupling hooks. Sadly, no couplings provided for those. I think that would have been nice to see for the money, but really that's the only feature I would say has not been included here. We've got the lamp bracket here, and of course there is a lamp included for you to fit onto one of those brackets. So again, just fantastic. Great quality metal buffers, and check this out. Yep, they are sprung. How amazing is that? Now, did Hornby really need to do this? No. Could they have left that feature off and made the model more affordable? Yeah, sure, I think that would have been good too. But that's not what Hornby have done with this. They've pulled out all the stops, they've tried to make this premium, and it certainly is. I'm a big fan of that feature, as you know. There's only so much detail that the tank portion can have, but even this is better than the railroad version, because the old model had this big crack at either end where the 2 halves of the tank were held together, and that really wasn't very subtle. Of course, on this new model, there is nothing like that, and it looks so much better and more realistic. And then of course, up on the top, we've got this catwalk / walkway, which is all etched, made of metal, and of course separately fitted, and it looks just fantastic. The fidelity on this is amazing. It feels like I'm looking at a completely different model to the old version. And then finally, we've got NEM tension locks pre-fitted, which have a little bit of pivoting to them, although if you look on the underside, yeah, these are not kinematic as the TT ones were. Interesting, isn't it, that? I don't think it will make any difference, but just an observation. I guess a slight note on quality, the other coupling isn't the best. The hook seems to want to ride up, which is obviously defeating the object of this coupling, so if that causes problems, I might have to swap it. But otherwise, speaking of quality, I can't fault this. It's good and heavy, loads of separate parts, but yet no glue that I've seen visible. Everything nice and straight. super impressive. So well done, Hornby. Yes, it's expensive, but as I always say, high prices are fine as long as you get what you pay for. And I think in this case, that is true. So with that, let's get this down onto the track. Let's give it a test and let's see how this runs. So here is today's test setup. I've chosen the 08 shunter as today's loco because that'll move the tankers nice and slowly so that we can observe them properly as they run. I've set up some other tankers. Most of these are a bit earlier than the TTA, or more than a bit, so they're not exactly a great match, but I thought it would add some interest. And I've also added on the old TTA, just so that you can get a better side-by-side comparison as they run, and also as a bit of a send-off for the old model. And then of course we've got the new one here, which I'm going to test the couplings on in just a second. So I've already filmed the free rolling test. Unfortunately, this did not do very well. On the first test, it didn't go far at all. It went to the footbridge and then stopped. So I checked the axles. It is not the brakes. There are no brake pads touching the wheels, so it's not that. The axles don't seem to have much play in the axle boxes, so maybe the axle boxes are pressing in on the pinpoints and stopping them turning very freely. And I did try gently pulling the axle boxes apart and trying again, and this did improve performance, but not massively. So that's a pity, unfortunately, not dreadfully free rolling, as a piece of rolling stock should be. Anyway, up next, let's test the couplings. Obviously, we've got the slight issue with this coupling hook, which means basically that coupling is unusable. Obviously, it's not a massive issue. Most of us have got spare NEM couplings, which we could use instead, but that's not the point. Obviously, expensive rolling stock should be spot on and usable straight out of the box. But obviously, for this test, it should be fine because the other TTA I've got should be able to use its hook. But there we go, coupling height seems to be all right. Obviously my old TTA has the large D-type coupling on it, so there's a bit of a mismatch there, but as you can see, all the couplings have worked, although clearly, yeah, the hook, the hook here is not engaged, and it's not going to because it stays in the upwards raised position, which is weird. Okay, well, let's send it off around the track, see if it stays on the track. Alright, here we go, an incredibly eclectic mix of tankers, and the TTA is looking very modern. Yeah, the contrast between the old and the new TTA is dramatic, to say the least, isn't it? Massive difference there. I have to say, I do think the new model is worth the money. You know, I do a lot of complaining about how expensive modern models are, but I'm not going to do that this time because it is worth it. You do get what you pay for. It looks great. It might not be the freest rolling in the world, the coupling might have had a slight issue with it, but it is running nicely despite those issues. No problems on the curves, no wobbling or anything. It is a stable runner, so I guess the tight tolerance between the axle boxes and the axle, they do mean that we get a nice smooth ride out of this, which is good. And overall, at least with this number of wagons, I'm not having any issue at all with performance. I think if you were putting a big train of these together and the slight stiffness to the axles is a widespread issue and it's not just a one-off thing, then yeah, perhaps you might find that your locos will be able to haul fewer of these than you're expecting. But apart from that, yeah, I can't see that being a massive problem. So overall, very, very impressive. Let's now pop this over the points and just check the performance there. Okay, so carpet point. In my view, this is a worst case scenario, and so models that do this properly, I can usually say are going to work fine on track that is not laid on a carpet. So it's a good test. Most models are fine across them. Let's see if these are. Obviously, we're only testing the new Hornby TTA, so any problems with anything else, I'll frustratedly take them off the track. And yes, one of the milk wagons has come off. I don't know why I'm continuing to run, but I am. Forwards. Amazingly, everything behind the new TTA has come off, but the TTA itself seems to be rock solid, a bit faster. Yeah, absolutely spot on. Brilliant. So, it's not looking good for the Hornby milk tankers, but for the TTA, yep, look at that. Absolutely spot on. Let me just open up that other point. Make sure that's all right. I think it's going to be, though. You can usually tell when a wagon's going to be problematic, can't you? And no, as expected, this one looks absolutely spot on. So no problems across the points. Let's have some ratings. So level of detail then, I've given 4.5 star. Yeah, this looks truly amazing, particularly compared with the old TTA. It's got a fantastic paint job, the detail is stunning with masses of underframe detail, sprung buffers, a lamp to put on the lamp brackets, etched metal parts. Yeah, really impressive. The only reason it doesn't get the full 5 star is because they didn't include the couplings to put on the hooks. I don't think this is a cheap model, so it shouldn't really be missing features, but then again, it's only a very minor issue. I'm not knocking it down much. Performance similarly is really good. I mean, it's nice and stable, it runs smoothly, and it does stay coupled. However, there is an issue with one of the coupling hooks, which renders it basically useless, and it's not that free rolling either, not making it very far down Gordon's Hill. Practically speaking, the model is fine, but I have seen better performance, so I do want to reflect that in the score. Similarly, the quality for me is a 4 star. There's really not a lot wrong with the quality here. It's very well built, all of the details are nice and secure, and I've not seen any visible glue or hiccups in the decoration. However, the construction is quite plasticky. A die-cast chassis perhaps would have been nice to see for the money, but these are not major issues, so I've only knocked it down by 1 star, and the slightly dodgy coupling also means that this can't get 5, but overall, yeah, the quality I think is great. Value for money then, the RRP is £34.99 and this is available for about £27.99 at the retailers. Honestly, I don't think that's bad at all. Perhaps a tiny bit expensive at the RRP, but otherwise you do get what you pay for. I think if everything else was perfect on this model, I might have even been tempted to give this a 5 because it's a very impressive piece of rolling stock for less than 30 quid, which is good to see these days. Overall then, that is 8.35 out of 10. I think that's a pretty good score and a grade of B. Into the logbook it goes at a respectable 3rd place, just above the Dapol vans and below the EFE bloater. And I think that's fair because the bloater was cheaper and I think you got a bit more for your money there as well. But overall, fantastic wagons. I could certainly recommend these. Well, there you have it then, folks. That was my review on the all-new TTA tanker from Hornby. And yeah, I think it's a wonderful model, really impressed by it. Couple of silly issues, I mean that coupling thing, that really should have been picked up, shouldn't it? But otherwise, on the whole, a fantastic model, really good to see Hornby do well with a new release. I think it's easy to forget that Hornby deep down is a really decent manufacturer, because obviously they do re-release a lot of older models at pretty high prices. And I'm the first one to criticise Hornby for that and start feeling that, you know, they're not the greatest manufacturer in the world. But, you know, when they really do pull out all of the stops and they really try to bring us something new and up-to-date and decent, models like this show that they are absolutely capable of that, which is really reassuring to see. So do comment down below, let me know what you think about this model. Have you got one of these? Which livery have you gone for? And what do you think about it? If you'd also like to try one of these, I do have affiliate links down in the description, so check those out if you are interested. For now though, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review, and I'll catch you on the next one. Alright, cheers folks, you take care.